All right, so let's go over different ways to progress in exercise today. So I want to pivot. I know I've been doing a lot of nutrition stuff because I figured that it was relevant because all the holidays, but I want to do some exercise stuff as well. So today I chose to go over different ways to progress in exercise. And this is going to mainly go outside of the normal, what you think of, which is going to be increasing reps and or load. So I'm going to start this one with probably the least popular, but in my opinion, the most underrated when it comes to a progression. And that's just going to be overall competency of the movement. So, and this can be anything like just overall control, overall rep consistency, meaning when you're doing a dumbbell press, are you doing first rep like this and then like this and then like this and then like this? And you will see generally a big difference if you look at, a beginner and a more advanced trainee. The consistency of their movement, like if you were tracking their bar path of a squat or a bench or something like that, the advanced trainee is pretty damn consistent. There's not going to be a giant margin of difference or error, whatever, when it comes to the movement, where someone new, I mean, they're all over the place. So this is generally the first progression that I want to see is just overall competency of the movement. So again, this can be control, rep consistency, or even keeping form while fatiguing. The only thing with this one is just keep in mind that as you fatigue, your body will kind of self-organize and choose a movement strategy that makes the most sense depending on fatigue. So I don't necessarily label this a bad thing, but if your main goal is to, bias this tissue as much as possible, as you're fatiguing, having a different movement strategy is probably not the best bet. But again, it depends on your goal. But one big thing I tell all of my clients is that we earn a progression, we don't force it. Because if we went from 8 reps, clean, super consistent form, to 10 reps, half reps all over the place, did you really progress? And in my opinion, no, you did not progress. 1. And 2, you're just greasing a bad movement pattern. And 3, you're potentially throwing, just different injury rates on the table, So let's try to keep it consistent. Let's try to standardize that form as much as we can. So that's going to be number 1, is just overall competency of movement. Number 2, which is kind of piggybacking off of number 1, is going to be increasing range of motion. So especially with new people, you'll see that they generally don't like to go in super low or super long muscle lengths. So for example, if they're pressing, it might be down this far. If they're squatting, same thing. It might be kind of halfway down. So with an individual like this, I might say, you know what, before we start adding in load, let's work on getting that range of motion towards as close to 100%, whatever that means for that individual, before we start adding load. And you will get more from the movement generally with increased range of motion. So that's going to be number 2. Again, standardizing that range of motion, making sure that we're trying our best to hit a full range of motion depending on what exercise. All right, then number 3, we're going to go with slowing down the tempo, adding pauses. We'll put this under the increasing time under tension, which can be another way of increasing form competency. But again, if we went from a 2-second lowering phase in a squat to a 3-second lowering phase to a 3-second with a pause, that is also progressing the exercise without adding any type of load or reps or anything like that. And I mess around and manipulate tempo a lot because it just establishes more control. So generally that will kind of be my 1, 2, 3, where it's like, let's just work on just overall control, whatever that range of motion is. Then let's keep that control, add range of motion. Then let's keep that control and range of motion, add a pause in the bottom. Then let's start adding some load. And again, this is very, very dependent on the individual. But if I see someone, maybe they're older, maybe they're new to the gym, maybe they have different issues when we're talking about shoulders, knees, joints, whatever, this might be a good approach to kind of ease them in before we just start chucking load at them. And some people in their brain, they can also be, oh no, my doctor said don't go to 20 pounds or whatever. So this can also be a way to, again, just bridge the gap and slowly ease them into increasing load. So play around with that one. So that's number 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go into increasing reps, increasing load. So the more common ways to progress in exercise. And then let's go to third, which Technically, this is this will increase volume, but it is a way to progress an exercise. So a couple of these right here. So one would be adding some sort of rest pause or a small continuation of a set. So for example, what I'll do before I go, let's add in a full another set, increase volume. This is kind of like a 25-50% increase in volume for that set. So what I would do would be, okay, on our final set, what we're going to do is we're going to get pretty close to failure, maybe leave one in the tank. We'll drop the weight, give ourselves about a 20-25 second rest pause, myo rep, and then we're going to go back at it. So it might look like 8 plus 4 reps, something like that. So again, just a good way to bridge the gap, because I don't like progressing just chucking more volume, because it's kind of like, well, where do we end at that point in time? Do we go to 8 sets, 9 sets, 10 sets, 11 sets? So this is a way, again, to kind of bridge the gap between adding a full additional set. And then the next one is increasing an additional set. So, and again, just chucking more volume at the problem is not something I try to go to firsthand. I generally say, let's see if we can make as much progression as possible, keeping volume consistent. If I see a weak body part or an exercise that maybe we're not progressing super well, I might try, especially at the end of a training block, let's add an additional set. Let's see how that works. And if we're not still getting, the stimulus adaptation that we're seeking, then maybe we're changing up the exercises, technique, form, things like that. Okay. And then another one, this is a little bit different, but I did add on the list, is potentially decreasing rest time. Now, this is more of a progression of work capacity, so how much work we're doing in a set amount of time, but it still is another way that you can manipulate and potentially progress an exercise. So just to kind of recap, number one, most underrated, in my opinion, overall form competency. Competency, control, rep consistency, keeping consistent reps while fatiguing. Now, the speed is going to slow down, but I'm just saying the technique, let's keep it consistent. Number two, increasing range of motion. Number three, slowing down the tempo, adding a pause. Number four, increasing reps. Number five, increasing load. And then kind of more honorable mention would be adding a rest pause set, adding another set, and then lastly, potentially decreasing rest times in between sets. Give them a try. Let me know what you think. What is your recommended, or what do you like for progressing an exercise? Have you tried any of these techniques? What do you like the most? What has worked well for you? Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks, guys.